Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is CY once again. Been really busy, so this is update on the comparison of grinders. Especially, I'm particularly interested in these two. Um, for those of you that have been following my YouTube channel, you know that this is the grinder that I have purchased about a month ago, which is actually the Fuji Royal Coffee Mill, made in Japan. This is what we have been selling since the beginning of this year. The trustworthy and very beefy DF64. And recently, I've switched out the DF64 uh, to the SSP Brew Burrs set, which is different from the SSP multi-purpose. By the word multi-purpose means that the brew is capable of making espresso uh, as well as filtered coffee. Um, but I wanted something that's dedicated for a particular brew method. I want something which I can change the brew style. So I have replaced this yellow color DF64. Previously was installed with the multi-purpose burr, but now I replace it and install it with the SSP red speed coated the brew burr. A lot of people get confused between the brew burr or the multi-purpose burr. They are different. The brew burr has a slightly elevated cutting edge, which means that when the two burr actually close and grind, it will not be totally close up. Hence, therefore, it will not be possible for you to do the burr alignment test using the wet marker test, because the when the two burr actually closes, the two burr doesn't really touch flatly on each other. Uh, if you let your finger feel around the surrounding, you will be able to feel that that's really very edgy as compared to the multi-purpose burr and versus the SSP espresso, which is normally called the high uniformity. Right. So and of course this Fuji Royal comes with the ghost burr. And for those of you that are not sure what a ghost burr is, I'm going to open up this grinder and let you see the burr set inside and do a side-by-side comparison. So let's do that. Right, so the removal of the burr set on the Fuji Royal is also pretty simple. Basically, it is the burr set actually held on by the two screws at the side. So you just have to unscrew it. There's actually something like a spring to sort of adjust the grind adjustment, which is very similar to the one on the DF64, which is supported by 3 springs. This one is supported by one whole spring, I believe. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Right, so the two screw cap is down, and you can see that it is the entire um, burr carrier. This is actually not the burr carrier. The burr set is actually inside. So and the adjustment is actually on the side, on the side here. So now this is actually something that's pressed against the burr. So I'm going to remove the one inside. This is actually where the burr sits. So you can see this is where the gear is, and the gear is actually attached to the inside of the core. And then as the burr turns, like the coffee drops down from here, and the two burr closes, and it grinds, and it comes out directly from the chute. I'm going to bring it closer to see it. But before that, let me show you the burr. This is actually the ghost burr, as you can see. You can see the teeth really look like teeth, and the teeth are sort of jagged and randomly shaped. So this is really different kind of burr. It does produce a little bit of fine, and somehow the Japanese technologies are able to make the coffee fine coffee powder, even though we don't want any too much fine coffee powder inside of the coffee. But somehow this fine coffee powder does enhance the flavor, and it doesn't make the cup cloudy. I'm really surprised. So this is actually the cup of tea. Okay, now I'm going to remove the SFC DF64 and show you the SSP burr set inside as well. So let's remove the hopper, the dial indicator. So this is actually the SSP Brew set of Burr. Let me show you at the side edges there. This is actually pretty sharp all the way on the outside. It is different from the SSP multi-purpose burr, whereby the outer rim is more flat as compared to the burr set. So I'm not too sure whether this will be captured on camera, but yeah. So this is the SSP brew burr, and of course this is the ghost burr. So these are the two burrs that I'm going to do a comparison, and the comparison is going to be very simple. I'm just going to do a simple cupping test to see whether I can taste any taste profile differences between these two burr sets using the same beans that were roasted a couple of days ago. Right, so this is going to be fun. Okay, so let me install the burr bag first. The installation is also very simple. And then this bag held by two screws. Hold it, and then you can just screw it back. In the process, in the process of cleaning or maintaining the burr, I think the Fuji Royal burr count set it does make the maintenance a lot easier as compared to the one on the DF64. But even the DF64 is really quite simple, but the Fuji Royal is even simpler. Yeah, okay. So I'm just checking whether I can go back all the way to number one, which is the minimal setting. By the way, there's a 10 grading or setting on the Fuji Royal, and this is step grinder. I'm not so worrying about step grinder onto the coffee. Usually for espresso, we prefer a stepless grinder because it gives you a more. You can actually grind finer by a very small adjustment, small increment. Whereby if you are using a step grinder, it probably doesn't give you that big kind of adjustment. It give you some sort of a fixed adjustment. So let me fix back. Green color face on top. Oh, by the way, why do I say green color? Because I have marking on my SSP Pro set. In the previous burr alignment, the green color one gives me the best alignment. So let's lock the collar down. I'm going to find the 0 point. Okay, that is the 0 point. Right, so everything is set. Let's install the hopper and the anti-popcorn, and we are going to turn all the way to 60. I have checked the grind size of 60 on the DF64 is approximately 6 on the Fuji Royal. They should give me approximately the same grind size. So now let's get to the most exciting part, which is actually tasting the coffee. And let me get my kettle and let's grind some coffee beans. So I'm just going to the coffee beans I'm going to test today for cupping is actually the coffee bean sample from Cafe de Panama, which is actually the Finca FSD, the Santa Teresa. These are the coffee sample given to me by the local supplier, which is actually from the Finca Santa Teresa. The Finca Santa Teresa farm, right? They have sent me this sample to test whether which one I'm actually getting. This is in this particular varietal is actually the Panama Geisha, honey process, which means it's natural, and the lot is the S3B. Right, so I'm going to test this according to the roasting profile given by the farm. Right, I'm supposed to taste a jasmine. Right, yeah, when I smell the bean, it does give me me a very strong jasmine smell. These are actually the beans which I've roasted. Yep, yes, there's a when it is freshly roasted, I can definitely smell the jasmine. So now let's grind 10 grams of coffee bean each. Let's do a 15 gram. Okay, from this point onwards, you realize that there's no more voiceover because my mic went out of battery and I didn't realize it, and I just keep on going and going. So basically what happened is I'm going to grind the coffee in the two different grinder, and I grinded 15 gram each. First I grinded the coffee on the DF64, which is a very pretty efficient in terms of grinding. Then I move on to grinding the coffee beans on the Fuji Royal Coffee Mill, and due to the design of the grinder, which is actually by gravity feed, that means that you feed the beans on top. The two burr sets are actually parallel to each other, and then they grind and the coffee just come down naturally at the bottom, which is by pull of gravity. And this is probably the reason why most of the bigger cafe, they will use the mechanic EK43 as their main grinder for their coffee. This is now very easy to understand because I can see that in the Fuji Royal here. So basically that's the gist of the video in this segment, and I can't really remember what I've talked about during the video itself, during the video recording, but I can tell you that this is roughly the things I'm talk about, and I probably talk about the coffee beans as well, which is actually the coffee beans from Finca Estates, and I have compared it with the coffee beans from the 90 plus estate, which I really like the most because it's really fermenty, and the high citrusity and the sweetness of the bean just amaze me. Okay, I will again be using the commentary which I post recorded because I've lost the voice footage due to the battery being totally flat on my my wireless mic there. So basically what I did was I do a smell test between the coffee grinded by the DF64 SSP Brew Burrs versus the coffee grinded on the Fuji Royal Coffee Mill. And in terms of intensity, I'm surprised by the fact that I realized the SSP Brew Burrs on the DF64 actually produce a much more intense smell from the freshly grinded coffee, And in terms of the scale of 1 to 10, if 10 being the most intense, I would say that the DF64 SSP Brew Burr set gives me a intensity of smell of up to 8.
and whereas on the Fuji Royal it gives me about 6.5. So there is quite a significant difference in terms of the smell intensity. And remember, we did a comparison of a grinder between the Fuji Royal versus the Comandante, and in that comparison the Fuji Royal already produced a much cleaner and a much stronger and much intense cup as compared to the one on the Comandante. And now with comparing by comparing this with the SSP Brew Burrs set on the DF64, and then I can definitely tell the difference between the two. And it's a bit unfair to compare the Comandante with the Fuji Royal anyway, because Fuji Royal is actually an electric burr grinder with ghost burr, which burr sets are very different, and versus the Comandante, which is actually a hand grinder. Yep, it may be one of the best hand grinder in this category, but then again, this is comparing to electric grinder with a different kind of burr set. And back to here, I'm comparing a SSP Brew Burr with the Ghost Burr, which is again different. And the point of today's comparison is actually not to find out which grinder is better, but rather which grinder actually produces a cup better for a cupping test. And in the video, I went on to smell. Okay, in terms of smell, the intensity is definitely higher on the DF64 Brew Burr. And I actually went on to do a tasting test when the coffee is hot. And yep, and later on you'll see that I realized that coffee tasted on the DF64 SSP Brew actually give a much cleaner cup and is sweeter as well. And yes, this is where I started to do a taste test, and I'm using the spoon given to me by Thomas, which is actually the golden color, flashy, and sort of a very beautiful spoon, cupping spoon. And I have to shout out to Thomas. Thank you for sending this beautiful spoon to me. And yep, I went on to do a test between the two, and definitely the coffee on grinded by the DF64 SSP Brew Burr actually produce a sweeter and a cleaner cup with heightened sweetness and low acidity, and that low acidity is probably due to my roasting technique. And comparing to the Fuji Royal Coffee Mill, definitely there's quite a difference actually, I will say. Again, I will use a scale of 1 to 10, 8 being the clarity and the sweetness for the DF64, and 6.5 on the Fuji Royal. So I think I will be using okay, this is actually a personal preference. I think the Fuji Royal does produce a fine coffee powder, and this actually gives the complexity in terms of taste, and also add on to the body of the coffee that I've tasted on the cup grinded by Fuji Royal. And in terms of the coffee grinded by the DF64, there's significantly less coffee fine powder. and hence therefore I think that's the reason why it is able to produce a cleaner cup. And in terms of sweetness, the degree of sweetness, I'm really surprised that the DF64 can produce such a cup with such a high sweetness as compared to Fuji Royal. Basically these are the same coffee beans, but I can already taste the difference in the sweetness level. So yep. And in the final section, right? You'll hear the music at the background because there's no I didn't capture the live recording of the voice, and I'll be doing a voiceover as well as running a very soft, pleasant music at the background. And of course, as a final closing, I will always invite you, if you're first time joining my channel. This is CY once again, and for those of you that first time joining me, my coffee channel is all about having fun making coffee. And today we did have fun making coffee with two different grinder, one with the SSP Brew Burr, and the other one the coffee mill from Fuji Royal with the Ghost Burr. And in remember that this video is not about comparing which grinder is better, but rather which grinder is actually better for a specific purpose. So if I'm going for clarity and sweetness, and able to distinguish the tasting notes, I'll probably go for the DF64 Brew Burr. And if I'm going for a cup with a more complexity and heavier body, and I'll probably go for the Fuji Royal. So if I'm going to make cold brew, definitely Fuji Royal will be the choice I'm going to use. But if I'm going for hot and to warm coffee with high clarity, I'll probably choose the SSP Brew Burr sets. So thank you for joining me today, and this is CY once again, and do stay safe, and I'll see you very soon in the next video, and see you once again. And before I forget, I have to do a bit of self promotion, right? Currently, we are selling the coffee beans from Yunnan Red One series, and that particular coffee bean is selling very well. And we are going to run out of stock pretty soon. So if you haven't get your hands on a bag of Yunnan coffee beans, you should try. If you really like the fermenty, winey kind of coffee beans, do get in touch with me. You can contact me through my WhatsApp, or you can contact me through my Instagram, which is actually under Cafe Matella Singapore. So either way, you can actually contact me, or you can actually reach me by my email address, which is speedy3dcreations.com, or speedy3d at gmail.com. So you can actually reach me by that email address. So thank you for watching once again, and hope you don't mind the self promotion here.